It's Wednesday, and that means it's time for another Business Analysis Live. My name is Susan Moore. I'm the Community Engagement Manager at IIBA.
And I'm Scott Bennett. I'm the Manager of Business Analysis here at the International Institute of Business Analysis. We've got a great topic lined up for you today. We're talking about a business analyst roadmap to formal leadership. So, if
Hmm.
you've ever thought sort of what the steps are to sort of get through your career, maybe you're just starting your career, or maybe you're partway through, or you're very experienced, how do you get into formal leadership? That's what we're going to chat about today.
Yeah, I bet you have heard this rumor, just like I have throughout my career, that being a business analyst is a feeder role for project management. Have you heard that one?
Yeah,
Yeah.
not well informed.
Yeah, and so I think by the end of today's broadcast, what you're going to come to understand is maybe there are some other roadmaps into other roles that business analysis professionals can take. And we are really excited because we've got a great speaker who talks about this topic.
Yeah. So, welcome, Priyanka. Welcome,
Thank
Priyanka.
you. Thank you. Hello,
Yeah.
everyone. Hi, Scott. Hi, Bennett. Hi, Susan. How are you doing?
Hey,
We're
great.
doing
We are
well.
great.
We're good. Yeah, thank you for joining us today. Priyanka, for those people who aren't familiar with your name, why don't you tell people about your background?
Yeah, for sure. So, I am a business analysis leader. I've been doing business analysis over 20 years now. My background is in consulting. I currently work at the South Coast British Columbia Transportation Authority. I also teach business analysis at McMaster University, and I've previously taught courses and created courses in business analysis at Simon Fraser University and University of Manitoba. I am a certified business analysis professional, a ProSci certified change manager, and an ITIL certified as well as Six Sigma. I do a lot of coaching on the side, and like I said, my past background is in consulting, working for some of the big fours.
That's awesome. So, as our viewers can tell, you've got credentials for this topic.
You know what you are talking about is what I'm hearing. And you've seen, because you are helping to build the next generation of not just business analysis professionals, but of leaders. Like, you are seeing these roadmaps kind of evolve. So we are super excited to learn a little bit more about what you see and have experienced in this particular area.
Yeah.
Um,
And just before we do, let's mention that we are live today, and the value
that's right.
proposition there for people that have joined us is you get to ask your questions. So, put your questions in the chat, and as we get through the conversation, we'll pop some of those on. We'll answer your questions. So, don't feel shy. If you've got a question, pop it in there.
That's right. All right. Well, so let's get started. I know we were talking before we got started today and just thinking about first how do we build an understanding of business analysis as a potential roadmap for leadership. So I think one of the things, Priyanka, that you and I have talked about previously is business leaders, they do business analysis, right?
That's right. It's interesting how we do business analysis without even knowing it. One of my videos that I previously posted is that you're doing business analysis when you're cooking, right? When you're playing sports, because you're trying to understand the problem, you're trying to solve the problem, and you're working with stakeholders and you're dealing with change. And so, actually, yesterday I was looking at LinkedIn, and on LinkedIn Talent Solutions, there was a job description for an executive director. And some of the job duties were looking for sponsorship or getting funding, working with the board, trying to drive organizational change. And as I read through some of these job descriptions, I'm like, isn't that what a business analysis does? It might be at a different level. The stakeholders may be different, but the knowledge areas, the tasks, the competencies are clear on overlap. So, for example, a business analysis, a business analyst specialist or a BA could possibly be working with developers and with, let's say, end users or clients. And they're the liaison between the two, right? Executives, on the other hand, they may be the liaison between upper management and the board, for example. So they're also a liaison, so one on one. And then business analysts drive change by definition of business analysis, and they add value. And that's what executive leaders do, but they do it at a very large scale. They do it at an organizational level as opposed to a project level. So the work that a BA does goes hand in hand with what executives do. And in fact, I feel from my experience that the key skills and traits of a BA can help executives and in their role on an everyday basis, and they do business analysis on an everyday basis. Sometimes they may not realize that.
Yeah, I can see that when we're doing, for example, facilitation. We're leading the conversation. We're looking to understand people and include people and bring them together to get a common understanding. It's from what you described, it sounds like business analysis can be a way to cut your teeth and learn the skills that can step you up and prepare you for that leadership.
Yeah, so I used to work, as I mentioned, in consulting before, and one of the directors that I worked with, his job was to make sure that he gets new business. So, business development was one of his core duties as a director to expand the business of the consulting firm. And so when he was doing that, he was doing market analysis, he was doing benchmarking, he was doing industry analysis. He had to have good business knowledge. All of these competencies and all of these tasks that he was performing was clear on business analysis according to the BABOK. So trying to get new funding or expand markets is all strategy analysis. And the tools and the techniques that we use are helpful in performing some of those tasks.
Yeah, that's great. Just for our audience, some of them might not be familiar with that term BABOK. BABOK is the business analysis body of knowledge. We commonly call it the BABOK guide. So if you're new to that, that's what that acronym means.
As you're talking about the competencies, that what changes at that leadership level is the scale and the focus. Maybe some of the reasons why some people don't necessarily see leadership as a potential roadmap is because maybe some folks do think about business analysis really by the kinds of deliverables they produce, right? So maybe in some organizations, business analysis professionals are creating requirements or business cases or something like that. So when we say leaders do business analysis, if they're not producing deliverables, what are the things that they might be producing, which would be at a different scale or focus?
So I think it's not just about deliverables. As we shift more into the agile space, deliverables are becoming secondary anyways. So it's like,
Right.
as the Agile Manifesto says, interaction over documentation. And so business analysis professionals are doing less of deliverables these days. It's more about the skills and the knowledge areas, the tasks, the techniques, the underlying competencies that they bring, the human element of it. And that's where executives are, a good inspiration, and possibly, vice versa. Business analysis can be an inspiration where they tie together very well.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So when someone's thinking about perhaps they're in their mid-career and leadership might be something that they're looking towards, what are the type of things that they can look for or approach they can use to learn these skills and practice them?
So there's several things to consider here, but I'm not saying that BAs are all BAs or everybody is ready for an executive position, but what I'm trying to say is that you have to build your credibility and you have to build your skills to get to a point where you're ready to take the next step. And so myself being, certified in business analysis and doing the CBAP, I have found great value in that. And of course, I teach business analysis, so I find that very fulfilling. And I've seen people's, um, the spark in their eyes and the aha moment that they have when they learn business analysis. So I am a huge proponent of getting these certifications from ECBA to CCBA to going into a CBAP, and then making sure that you fully understand not just the concepts but the application of business analysis, and thinking not, like Susan said, from a deliverable perspective but from an outcome perspective, and
Mm.
thinking of the big picture, thinking holistically and strategically, and making sure that you are that stakeholder liaison. You are that person who's managing and getting consensus, getting buy-in from your people, and thinking about what gaps exist. So, for example, if you are assigned to a project and you have to deliver, let's say, an RFP or a business case, let's not just think about that business case. Let's think about what are some processes that could benefit from your business analysis skills that would be a byproduct or would facilitate a faster delivery of your product or work product, right? So
Yeah.
what is there a maturity gap? Is there a learning gap? And some of these things are also covered in the babok. So looking at those organizational gaps and trying to fulfill those gaps through your business analysis skills and bringing value to the organization is what takes you to the next level and prepares you for a leadership role which is formal. So it's not just about being thinking, from and thinking about your specific project, but expanding those to an organizational level and then to an enterprise level and then to a continuous improvement level. So how do I sustain this? How do I scale this? Organizational change. So what can I do so this can be adapted and flexible? And how do I see this in 10 years? Having that foresight. Those are some key ways that you can move into that, but of course, there's other ways which we can discuss in a bit. Um, and I've discussed this at BBC this year in May on how soft skills play a critical role as well.
Okay. So it sounds like what you're suggesting is working within an organization to move yourself up into that formal leadership role. We've talked on this podcast before that sometimes people transition by going to a different organization. But often when you're making that role transition, it's easier to do it within where you have a reputation versus trying to make that jump in an organization where your background, your credibility is not known.
I think it's a little bit of both. It depends on the individual, what they're comfortable with, what their life goals are.
Okay.
We can't look at profession as an isolated thing. People have different reasons. I think it can go either way. You could move to another organization, or you could stay in yours. But definitely, I do feel that if you've built that credibility over time, and when you talk about organizational change, which as a BA you want to do and think holistically to move up, it's better to be in the same organization so you've had that stages of maturity and you get to witness it, just like filing a patent. It takes forever to get that.
Yeah.
So if you move your organization, you're going to lose that credibility even though you were the inventor. You have to be Many organizations have this policy that you have to be in the organization when it's awarded. So if you want to think holistically, I think some commitment to the organization is also important.
Hmm. As we're talking about that that shift that you might make, it is more than just applying for that job, that managerial job or supervisor job, right? But before we got together today, we were talking about really you want to align yourself with folks that are already at the level where you want to be first. You need to get their attention, and that's where I think that other banner that we had up just a minute ago, um, making sure that business analysis is adding value to the organization, but you as a business analysis professional are also adding value. That's really important. So making sure that you are visible when you align yourself with someone that is at that higher level, they can do other things for you, like help you to build some of the skills that you need if you want to move up in the organization. That's really powerful. When
100%.
yeah, when you can build allies like that that can help move you.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And to Scott's point as well, the longer you've been in an organization, the more chances for that to happen because you have those
Mhm.
relationships, you've built your credibility, you believe in the culture, you understand the culture. And so then you're in a better position to drive that change and add value to the organization because you've seen it. Versus being new, you may not be familiar with the culture, you may not have been assimilated in the culture. And so culture plays a huge role as well when you're trying to add value to an organization at an enterprise level. And I wholeheartedly agree with, Susan, your point that it's important to have an ally and a mentor who is in that position, who can provide that mentorship and sponsorship or even coaching for areas that you may lack, the blind spots that you have. Try to uncover those and help you move formally into that position because we as BAs already do informal leadership, but it's more
Yeah.
about that formal part.
Yeah. And I think even if your ally or your mentor or your sponsor is not within your organization, even if it is just a relationship that you have outside of the organization, I think they can be so helpful because we are, as business analysis professionals, put into situations where we are informal leaders and we can bring our business analysis skills. But becoming a formal leader does require an additional skill set. So there's like the stuff that you need to do to manage, but you have also mentioned, Priyanka, that it is a lot about soft skills. It's a lot about the people skills that you bring in, and that sometimes can be the differentiator in your path to leadership. Maybe we talk a little bit about that and the importance of those other skills.
Totally, Susan. So, in addition to what I've already mentioned, I think the key here is to first be the master of your trade. So know your business analysis and be able to deliver on time, on quality, and make sure that people are aligned. So do your work well, and once you've done that, then you're ready for the next thing. So to bridge that gap between talent and triumph, you need to have certain executive presence, as I call it, or certain skills from a people perspective that can take you to the next level. Now, there was a research that was conducted about 10 years ago, and there were several private sector organizations that were surveyed. And it was found that executive presence is threefold: it's about gravitas, it's about communication, and it's about appearance.
Mm,
And when we say gravitas, it means being 5 questions deep, having heft, but also knowing your stuff cold, which is being an expert in business analysis in this specific context. Communication is about being able to have a concise and compelling style of communication, having that 5-minute elevator pitch and getting your idea across. And then appearance is about looking like you know what you're saying, not just superficially, but skin deep. Living it and walking it, not just exercising or delivering, but talking the talk, walking the walk, and showing that you can take care of yourself through your appearance, through your body language. So those were some key aspects of executive presence that also help reorient you or position you into an executive position. But from my experience, I found that that is a thing of the past because, yes, it's important to have heft, but in today's day and age with Gen Z and all these new things coming up, it's more about the mindset. So, the
mhm.
ability to learn, the ability to work under pressure, the ability to have emotional regulation. And once you have these key skills, then you're automatically feeling like you can have poise under pressure, or you can have calm under challenge. So it's about the emotional regulation and the mindset, the growth mindset. It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to learn, but you have to have that resiliency because leaders have to have those skills in order for them to drive change. Changing, or driving an organization is not an easy thing, and there will be failures and there will be learning. But if you keep beating yourself up over it, there's no way that you're going to be successful. So it's important to have that mindset. And communication is great, but it's also important to have empathy. If you're empathetic, which means that you're listening, you're actually not just hearing people, but you're listening and you're responding in a way that you're building connections, then communication just becomes a piece of cake. And the third aspect is authenticity. So while it's important to be, good in appearance, as scientists say or research has shown, it's important to know who you are and to bring your whole self and your real self forward. Because authenticity is something that brings genuine connections. And appearance may be pretense. And so it's important that while you're focused on your appearance, you're also focused on your authenticity. Because I'm a huge proponent of multiculturalism as well. And I think diverse perspectives and people bring value to the table. And so, in my view, while it's important to know your trade and be an expert, having good mindset, having empathy, and being authentic are some key traits that take you to the next level.
I
Yeah, Susan, when we were talking before the session, you had made a comment about how leadership amplifies. Sorry,
Yeah, who
I'm getting this right.
amplifies who you are as a person.
Yeah.
And so as I'm listening to Priyanka, the notes that I'm making is, there was a time not so long ago where leadership was all about command and control. Um, I have a process, we drive to results, and I get it done by any way possible. And I think agile organizations, and that is not organizations that have stand ups, by the way, like truly nimble organizations are ones where they are led with empathy, where they are led by people who understand that it's important to be able to not just get results but also to take care of their teams and do so in a manner that is ethical, sustainable, that respects humanity and all that other stuff. I think those are nimble organization qualities. That's what I'm hearing in kind of the leadership vision that you've got, Priyanka,
Yeah.
and what your stats are showing as well from the research.
That's right. Yeah.
One thing I learned partway through my career was the idea of influencing without authority. I love that phrase.
Hmm.
And it was something that when I was a junior business analysis professional, I felt uncomfortable with working with people that were twice my age and sort of having a little bit of leadership and sort of steering conversations. But as I grew in my career, it became evident that influencing skill got me into a managing skill. And that influencing skill is something that prepares you for leadership. And if people are looking to practice the skill, leadership, it is something that we have. IIBA has chapters around the world, and chapters are always looking for leaders. So you can join a chapter, you can volunteer as a leader, and work alongside with other leaders that have experience. Sometimes the most difficult people to motivate are volunteers. So it's a great learning environment, right? How do you motivate these people that are tight on time, but they want to help, but they have other priorities? It can be a good learning ground.
100% agree, Scott. I think learning is a really, really important skill,
Mhm.
and we as leaders are always learning. All of us are always learning. There's no end to learning, and once you have that mindset, as I mentioned previously, to be able to learn and to want to learn, that's the foundational basis for you to move up or to go anywhere in your life. The learning aspect is huge.
Yeah. So let's dig in a little bit more. You mentioned this a couple times already, Priyanka, but transitioning into that leader role, I heard you a couple times mention things like find a leader and work with them to help you pull you into that, learn some skills. What other types of things should people consider when looking to transition to that formal leadership role?
So, like I mentioned previously, trying to understand what the organizational issues are and trying to solve those. So, going
Mhm.
above and beyond your specific role and trying to find ways to make your role more effective and the organization more effective. Also, having a continuous improvement mindset. There's no end to work, but the work needs to, the work evolves and there's it revolutionizes also, right? Like change is the only constant. So organizationals evolve, and so what is the best path for your organization? I'm not saying to like be totally revolutionary, but to think what is the next step for the organization, from a maturity perspective, from a continuous improvement perspective. How can I add value? How can I bring my BA skills to improve the effectiveness, or maybe the culture? Not that the culture is bad, but how can I improve it, because there's always room for improvement. So, looking for those opportunities within the organization and being more visible to your executive team, or to your senior leaders is a great way to move into formal leadership. And that is done through the work that you deliver, or the person that you bring to the table, the value that you bring to the organization. It's not just about deliverables. It's not just about, getting from point A to B. It's like, what's B plus? And really being invested in the work that you're doing, but also being aware of your surroundings.
We sometimes have folks ask, how do I tell the leaders in my organization about the work that I do or why I should be a leader? And I know, Scott, you have on several occasions said, first you need to show them, not tell them. So, Priyanka, be
Yeah.
visible. Also, you're kind of auditioning for that role.
That's right.
So, as a business analysis professional with your eyes on a leadership position, you need to be thinking about, how am I connecting the work that I am doing with a particular outcome and making sure that people understand that outcome is really valuable. That's how you get visibility. You are not going to, you will be blue in the face talking about the importance of business analysis. Leaders are interested in results. They are not
Totally agree.
interested in all of the different deliverables that you produce. So it is a difference in focus
That's
um,
right.
that you've got to do um, to get into that leadership role.
Yeah.
I'll add one other thing too, is that volunteering is a great way to do that, whether it is volunteering inside your organization for things that'll get you a little more visibility, or volunteering outside of your organization. And sometimes volunteering outside of the organization, whether you do that in an IIBA chapter or in my case, an alumni chapter, it's a great way to build leadership skills without it impacting your paycheck if if things don't go well. So think about that as well. Sometimes we often think about volunteering only as the time that we give, but you get a lot back. So that consider that as well.
Yeah, for sure. Okay,
Do we
we've
want
got
to take some
a few
questions?
questions, but just a reminder to our viewers, ask your questions here. We've got Priyanka with us to help answer your toughest questions. So throw us some good ones in the comments there.
Yes, there we go. All right. So we've got our first one. This is from Umra. Thank you. So, does this mean that willingly or unwillingly, the business analysis role becomes paramount when taking up higher leadership roles? That seems to be the premise of today. That, yep. What do you
Absolutely.
think?
Yes. Yeah, 100%. I think business analysis and anywhere, as you know, everywhere, the whole marketing team that we have is actually grounded in reality. Business analysis is everywhere, whether you're like I said before, you're doing something at home for your family, or whether you're at work, or whether you're in a leadership position. Regardless of what level you hold, you're doing business analysis in some form or shape. And having that structured decision making, that structured thought process, whether it be use cases, you're thinking through things, you're becoming more holistic in your analysis, and that helps with better decision making, which leaders make on an everyday basis.
Hmm.
And so I see business analysis as a foundational skill for higher leadership roles. And I feel that as you grow in your career, business analysis becomes second nature. It's like, as a junior BA, you may go through root cause analysis and several techniques to understand the problem. But when you get to a senior role, you look at someone and you know the problem. That's your intuition because you've had that experience, that breadth and depth of experience.
Right.
It's, you're in chemistry and you have to memorize the tables for elements, but when you're a scientist, it's like in the back of your mind. So it's a similar thought process.
Yeah. And and I and while I think that business analysis role can be almost an entry level for leadership, also just performing business analysis skills, whatever your job title is, um, also kind of can prepare you for that leadership role. All right. So let's see. Oh, let's see. I'm here we go. Let's try this again. There we are. Okay. Next, I so we've got a this is Steve. Hey Steve. Not so much a
Hi,
question
Steve.
as it is a comment. I feel like we all know Steve. Hey, command and control structures in corporate environments leads to employees not sticking around for very long. Yeah, command and control, I think, is very much an old way that we got results.
Mhm.
Especially for younger generations that are coming into the workplace, my experience has been they want far more collaboration. They really want to work more with people. Command and control, I think, for some of the millennials, Gen Z, all those others, I think it can really be off putting.
Yeah, I agree with that. Although I'll put in, I'll be a devil's advocate for a second. And just based on research and past experience, sometimes, however, command and control is the only way to go. So, for example, if an organization has been through a cyber attack and there's an emergency situation and things need to be done really quick, and that collaboration time is not there, there's no opportunity for that collaboration. It just steps need to be taken to minimize damage. In emergency situations or criticalities like that, command and control may be an option where a command structure has to be created to minimize disruption and damage. But generally speaking, on an everyday basis, I'm a huge believer that the more you as a BA as well, get buy-in and consensus, the more effective and sustainable it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll share a story in my career. I went to work at Capital One Canada, and the first time I had exposure to servant leadership, that style, was I was interviewing for the job, and I asked my boss at that time, senior director, Vishal Verma, hello out there. I asked him about working hours, and he said, "I'm going to give you a laptop, and I'm going to give you a BlackBerry." Yes, it was those days, um, and you get your work done where you get it done, as long as you get results. And that blew my mind at that point in my career that someone actually would manage that way. And his style was basically, my job is to take the roadblocks and get them out of your way so you can do your job the best. Wow, it was an eye opener from a leadership perspective for me.
And I bet in that situation that you knew your leader trusted you to get your work done was also motivating and empowering. And so that to
Mhm.
me is the difference between command and control, where there's an implication that leaders don't trust their employees. And Steve, that's I think why people don't stick around when command and control is the long term leadership style. Certainly situational, we I'm the leader, we got to get this thing executed. Situational command and control makes sense. But yeah, that it can indicate that there's a lack of trust. Um, yeah, trust is a big one. That's another one of those big skill sets that I think business analysis professionals wanting to move into leadership, they need to understand how important trust is to the work that you do. And there's kind of an equation for building trust. I know we've talked about it sometimes.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point, Susan. When you're new as a leader, whether regardless of what role you're in, building that trust is really that key thing you need to do early,
Yeah.
right? Is how do you get people to trust you so that you can form that bond, so you can form that relationship? If that's something you don't pay attention to, I've noticed, it can really trip you up.
Hmm.
Yeah, one of there's a model, and I made this presentation about situational leadership last year at BBC, where it depends on your stakeholder, their level, where they're at, and where you're at in your career, and the dynamics between the two, the permutation and the combination that defines the best strategy or the leadership style. And it evolves over time because you change over time, stakeholders change over time, the dynamics change over time. So the situational leadership style will have to adapt to that situation.
Ah,
Interesting.
that's a yeah, that's a really great point. Because we've talked about a little bit leadership amplifying who you are as a human, right? To know when to use different styles of leadership, that's a pretty advanced way of thinking about leading.
Susan, I'm going to
Um,
be a little bold here. I think we have to have Priyanka back to talk about that topic.
I feel like we do. And by the way, I just wanted to say because you mentioned situational leadership. That was your talk last year at BBC. This year's talk was on executive presence.
That's
Yeah,
right.
yeah. So also another great topic. All right, well, let's see. Let's go to our next question here. This is from Gabriella. Is it possible to become a leader without any team management skills and only relying on your BA skills? How would you express or show that you can become a leader in the company?
I think that depends on what you mean by leader. Leader means different things to different people. In my mind, leader is not a title. Leader is an attribute, it's a characteristic, how you carry yourself, what you do for the society, for the community. I'm a huge volunteer. I've been volunteering with IIBA for over 15 years, and I see fulfillment in giving back to the community. So I coach people, and I'm a BA leader. So it depends on how you see yourself as a leader, and also the faith in yourself, that you need to have that confidence that you can step up. So while BA skills are important, they're like the basics. And if you want to move into a a leadership role without any team management, you can do so through the influence that you have. Right. So, for example, speaking at conferences, teaching courses, and leadership from an SME perspective. So, it's the viewpoint that you have, the lens that you bring on what leadership means to you. It could mean leading a group of stakeholders during a requirement session. That's also leadership. Bringing consensus is also leadership. So those are some ways that you show that you can become a leader in the organization.
Scott, maybe you can weigh in on this as well because you actually do manage you do manage BAs here
Yeah,
at IIBA.
I'm on the third or fourth team that I've managed of various sizes. I do think that people having some experience leading people is important because if you think about a business analysis professional or anyone in their career, leading people and managing people, looking after people, um, does require some different skills. Priyanka, you mentioned empathy. That's a key one.
Yeah.
If you've never done that before and you're trying to make that transition, it can be difficult. So I think there are opportunities that would certainly demonstrate to leaders that you're able to do that, taking you from not having shown that in an organization in a formal way and getting into a leadership role in a formal role might be difficult. But certainly take the opportunity when there's larger projects, for example, be the lead business analysis professional. Work with the others. You're coordinating work. You're doing more than just your own work, but you're working with others to produce a result. So that might be an opportunity to showcase that.
And like I said before, just working on your BA work is not enough. You need to look at other organizational issues, whether it be, let's say, equity, diversity, and inclusion initiative, or another volunteer initiative, or building up a center of excellence in business analysis. So those are some opportunities that you can bring forth that are beyond your day-to-day job and show that you are capable of being a leader and you have what it takes. And again, back to my point about mindset, you need to, like Scott said, the empathy, the mindset, the communication, the influence, and the authenticity are important aspects.
Hmm. Let's see. All right. So our next question, Priyanka, you used the term situational leadership. What is it? Is this LinkedIn user's question? This shows up in many jobs. So what do you mean by situational leadership?
Situational leadership means understanding the context, the stakeholder, as well as your own power position. So there's different models of situational leadership in the market. There's one called Ken Blanchard's situational leadership. And there's also another one, which is a fixed type of leadership. I'm forgetting the name right now. But what happens is that as a leader, let's say Ken Blanchard's, you can apply that to business analysis. So, for example, if somebody is brand new, it's like learning a bicycle. This is an analogy that I love to take. You're teaching a child to ride a bicycle. They have no idea what the bicycle is. It's the first time they've seen it. You'll tell that person, this is the brake, this is the pedal, this is the wheel, this is where you put your hand. And they'll be okay with that because they have no clue. But if you're telling somebody who does, trail biking or is a mountain biker, they're going to be totally upset and flip at you. So you need to understand the level of competency of your stakeholder that you're working with and adapt your style accordingly. And as they get a grip of, okay, I know what this cycle is about, what do I do next? Now it's not about understanding the what, the why, but okay, you need to push yourself a little bit forward. You need to, so that to build momentum, that's when you get balance, right? So the type of instruction or conversations you're having have evolved. And sometimes things may slip back depending on their tasks or the mood that they're in. They may be totally competent, but they may not be motivated. So, what's the real reason? And so, understanding the two sides, the competence and the motivation, it could be low competence, low motivation, high competence, high motivation, or a medium of the two, and then adapting your style. So, then when somebody gets to a point where they totally know how to ride a bicycle and they're doing mountain biking, then you say, okay, here's the bike. Bye bye. Don't contact me, but if you get into an emergency situation, you need to go to the hospital, call me, which means when there's an escalation, get in touch with me. So a BA needs to adapt their instructional style, their leadership style based on these situations. So that's in a nutshell situational leadership from Ken Blanchard's. And then, like I said, there's other situational leadership models as well.
Those are really great examples, by the way, and I think it underscores how important social skills, people skills, soft skills are in any leadership role because that takes some finesse. What you've just described, meeting a person where they are and understanding where they are, so that you can flex to them, rather than just this is the way that I teach it, lead it, show it, deal with it. Not a good leadership style.
Yeah. And I heard a little bit, I think, in there what I would describe as coaching.
Mhm.
So as a leader, it's not just, hey, go do this, but it's making sure that people are set with the, I guess, the tools to be successful, rather than
That's
just
right.
putting someone on a venture without any tools in their toolbox.
Yeah, it's they call it delegation, coaching, and instruction. So there's like different terms.
Hmm.
So instruction is like when you're telling them ABCD. Coaching is when you're just helping them when they need it, and then delegation is like, okay, you got this. I'm just gonna be there for oversight. So different phases. That's right.
Yeah,
Wow, we really do need to have her back to talk about this. We could
we
unpack
do.
this all day long. So I know that we have more questions, but we are getting just about to the end of our time. Do we want to take one more? What do you think, Scott?
Yeah, let's grab one more.
All right. So this is an interesting perspective. We didn't deal with domain knowledge today and how important that might be in your roadmap to leadership. Will domain knowledge really influence the career? And how can you move ahead without strong domain knowledge?
I think it's a double-edged sword. It's a very important point and a good question. I think yes and no is the answer. It depends. But I do think that domain knowledge is important. I did mention about industry knowledge and organizational knowledge and market knowledge in the first part of the conversation. And I was referring to implicitly as domain knowledge. So if you're working in the transportation sector and you're not thinking about the big picture of transportation, then you're at a disadvantage, absolutely, because what works in health does not necessarily work in let's say transportation. There may be some overlaps, but domain knowledge is, I feel, a foundational skill and good for junior BAs. But as you grow further in your career, it becomes more about the people skills because executives work with people and the organization. So,
Right.
domain knowledge, I feel, is a foundation. But at the same time, BAs need to be agnostic, platform agnostic. They need to be adaptable and flexible. And like Scott said, they need to be able to learn. So, projects change, organizational direction changes. And so, having at least one area of domain that you're very good at is definitely a big advantage. But you also need to have that adaptability and resilience, which we talked about as well.
Hmm. Yes, great answer. Great
Wow.
answer. All
Yeah.
right. Well, Priyanka, we want to thank you for coming and joining us today. This has been, boy, once we started to get into some of the answers, our comments really started moving. So I think a lot of people are really excited and interested about this topic. Thank you so much for joining us today. I know we'll be talking again soon.
Yeah.
I'm
Thank you,
so
Priyanka.
excited. Yeah, thank you so much. It was a pleasure being here. I look forward to talking to you again.
Yeah, take
Take
care.
care.
All right, so we are wrapping up today's session, but we'll be back in 2 weeks, just like always. And we have got a talk on visual communication with Grant and Patty. Maybe you've seen them on LinkedIn. They do some pretty incredible things with this. So we will be talking to them in 2 weeks. We'll see you soon.